Welcome back everybody to another installment of our weekly Moto News Roundup, where this time around we'll be looking at some new spy shots of what appears to be Royal Enfield's new adventure bike, some new experiences from Ducati and Moto GUZZI, a great giveaway from CARDO, new paint from Yamaha and Suzuki and two new engines from Yamaha, and then we'll round off with some interesting looking new tech also from Yamaha and from Honda. But first up, let's take a look at those spy shots we were sent of a new bike being tested from Royal Enfield. And in short, what we've got here is an adventure bike chassis similar to that of the Himalayan 410 or 450, but just powered by what looks like their 650 parallel twin, or potentially a slightly larger version of it. You see, rumor has it that this new bike will be a 750, and so that could mean instead of the 47 horsepower peak you currently get with the 650 twins, you could be looking at more like 55 or 60 horsepower. For me, it would be a welcome change because although the 650 twin is a nice engine, it's got a great character to it, it's got a decent amount of torque as well, it could do with a bit more punch for carrying luggage and passengers and also for motorway speeds overtakes. As for the rest of the bike, it's a little more seriously spec'd than the other Himalayans with twin discs up front from Spied and a fully adjustable upside down fork as well. And then also versus the other 650 twins, you've actually got a different swing arm design here that allows it to be mounted to a monoshock, which I guess will give a bit better performance off-road than the typically twin shocks on the rest of the 650 bikes. Wheels are spoked, of course, with a 17-incher at the rear and then a 19 up front. And so I guess they're hoping to strike the right balance between on and off-road handling. And then in the cockpit, you can see a bunch of different, I'd say, temporary dashes, including one that looks like a Garmin bicycle computer. And so potentially this part of the bike is still TBC. That said, it wouldn't be a huge surprise if it got the round TFT display that you'll see on the Himalayan 450 or the Bear 650, which opens up some menus and navigation capabilities and connectivity and stuff like that. Or maybe they'll give it a slightly larger, more typical for an adventure bike, rectangular dash. Other neat touches I've spotted in these pics are the high-mounted silencer, the integrated taillights, the rackless pannier mounts, and also what looks like a decent fuel tank capacity, finished off at the front with a round headlight that's typical of their sort of style of bikes, topped off with an adjustable windscreen, so potentially decent wind protection for motorway riding and touring and stuff like that. I reckon this one could be another hit for Enfield as long as they can stick to their typically very tempting price points. And while it'll almost certainly be their new top-of-the-range flagship model, with the rest of the 650 bikes being around $7 grand when they top out, you'd hope this one will still come in well under 10 grand. So look, another top seller on their hands, or is it still going to be too underpowered for true versatile adventure touring type riding? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Now that bike is expected to be announced at EICMA in Milan this year, so November 2025, but if you're too impatient to wait for an Enfield twin with a bit of off-road capability, then you could still consider the Bear 650, new for 2025, and they've also just announced that he'll be heading off on an epic trip with the well-known long-distance rider Nick Sanders. MCM report that he's collaborated with Royal Enfield for this trip and he'll leave at the end of March, attempting to circumnavigate pretty much the entirety of Europe, with the distance totaling 30,000 kilometers or about 18,500 miles. It's an anti-clockwise route that will follow the coast as much as possible up through Norway into the Arctic Circle, then skirting round Ukraine. And they say you can follow his progress on his own social media channels as well as his channel here on YouTube. Now, I should point out, it's not the first Enfield that Nick has ridden. Back in 1992, I think he did his first round-the-world trip on a Bullet 500, so hopefully the Bear 650 is a little bit of a step up from that in performance. But after that, he switched over to Yamaha for a 25-year partnership. So it is a significant move back over to Enfield, especially off the back of riding some of the most accomplished adventure bikes on the market. And so I'll be very interested to see how this trip compares for him. Now, the ride ends on the 27th of June, I believe, which is one of the first days of ABR Festival, Adventure Bike Rider Festival, one of the most popular events here in the UK. And so if you want to find out how the Bear 650 did, then I assume you'll have a speaking slot where you can do Q&A, so it may well be worth checking that out and attending. And I'll definitely be there myself to have a listen to what he's got to say about it. But look, if you're after something even more off-road capable or much more off-road capable, then you might want to consider Ducati's new MX bike, which we did cover in a recent installment of this show. And if you fancy giving one a go before you pull the trigger, then the good news is that they've just announced a bunch of experience days dotted around the UK, so you can do exactly that. Now, no license required apparently, you just need to demonstrate that you've got some decent riding experience. But for 220 quid, you get the bike, dedicated trails, premium hospitality, and also some expert tuition. So sounds like a bit of a dream day out. Speaking of dream days out though, Moto GUZZI also announced just this week that they've got their dates for their open house event, which is going to take place from the 11th to the 14th of September this year in their hometown of Mandello del Lario. This is meant to be the ultimate event for Moto GUZZI enthusiasts, with historic bikes on show, their eagle market for a bit of shopping, some trips, exhibitions, festivals and music, plus the chance to tour the museum, all while the factory is currently undergoing a bit of an upgrade to be finished in 2026. Now, next up, I thought I'd bring you just a couple of giveaways that I've read about in my inbox. One of them's from KTM, who say that one lucky EXC owner, so that's one of their dirt bikes, will win a full-on VIP experience at this year's Erzberg Rodeo hard enduro event in Austria. Described as the world's most difficult one-day motorcycle race, the winner gets 2 gold VIP passes for the race, accommodation for the duration, a helicopter stunt ride, a private Erzberg tour with hard enduro world champion Manny Lettenbichler, a meet and greet with the KTM factory racing riders, and exclusive access to their factory racing Enduro and Dakar trucks. Sounds like a heck of an experience to me, and the only thing you need to do to qualify to win it is buy a new 2025 KTM EXC. And then once you've done that, head to their website to register your purchase. Meanwhile, our partners over at CARDO are giving away one of their recently announced Roland Sands limited edition headsets, of which just 1,000 units will be made. I believe they're already almost sold out, but one will be given to a lucky winner, along with a rather bling-looking Roland Sands design bell bullet helmet. All you gotta do for this one is ride 300 miles or 482 kilometers between April the 11th and May the 2nd this year, and log the ride with their Riser app, and you'll automatically be entered and the winner will be notified over email. That said, if you were looking to pick up a CARDO anyway, this weekend is a really good opportunity to do so, because they're running a flash sale, so it's just today, 19th of April, and tomorrow the 20th, just for the 48 hours, with a massive 25% discount off anything on the site, apart from their flagship Pack Talk Pro, which gets all their crash detection features and stuff like that. But still, even for that one, that's 15% off. All you gotta do for this one is use our code that's down in the description below to unlock that deal, and you should be good for, a quarter off pretty much most CARDO products. Moving on though, we've got some bike updates for 2025 still ticking through, the first of which is Yamaha's brilliant little retro learner that I reviewed a couple of years back, the XSR125. For about $5,000, you're getting a very peppy little 15 horsepower single cylinder engine with variable valve timing, I believe. And it's just been updated for the latest emissions regulations so that it can pass Euro 5+. Thing is though, while they were at it, they took the chance to update the paint jobs, and personally I think they look really rather good, with the base XSR125 now coming in white and red, but it's the XSR125 Legacy that costs admittedly an extra 400 quid, but it's the one that really did catch my eye. This one gets spoke wheels with gold rims and a silver and red paint job that references their XT dirt bikes of the 70s and 80s. Personally, I reckon that might well be the coolest looking little learner bike or 125 currently on the market, but let me know what you think of it down in the comments. Meanwhile, Suzuki's legendary Hayabusa keeps on going, and this one also gets new paint for the 2025 model year. Perhaps the most unusual of the bunch could be this new metallic matte steel green, which I don't think we've seen anything like on a BUSA before. But then also, if you want something more conventional, there's a silver version with blue accents now. And of course, there's a black one, a bit more stealthy, with some bronze highlights, which I'm sure will still be popular. At the same time, they've also announced some new paint jobs for the 2025 Katana as well, which comes in its iconic silver and blue with the gold wheels. That's probably always going to be in the lineup because it's the one that most closely references the original. But then also now Pearl Vigor Blue on bronze wheels for something that I'd say looks a little more contemporary. All very nice in my opinion, But let me know your pick down in the comments. Now, if you follow MotoGP, you might be well aware that pretty much all of the grid uses V4 engines, absolutely dominated recently by Ducati, and the only exception has been Yamaha, who are still using their crossplane inline 4. That could be set to change though from 2026, with it being fairly well documented that they are indeed working on their own V4 engine, and more recently it's been confirmed that it's been in testing and they're pretty close to it being done, although there is one major caveat. Visordown report that their technical director Max Bartolini said next year's bike is going to have the V4 engine if the V4 engine is faster than the actual inline 4 bike. Testing it with the official riders depends on how the development goes, if the bike is ready as soon as possible. So as long as they can get it to make more power than the engine that they're currently using, then they're good to go, which, you know, makes logical sense. Thing is though, it got me wondering, would this engine ever make it into a road bike? That's pretty much what's happened to Ducati. They originally built theirs for MotoGP, and now it powers pretty much all of their large capacity bikes. And also, Yamaha have recently, in a lot of markets anyway, discontinued the R1 owing to the fact that it can't really pass the stricter emissions regulations. So could a new V4 engine bring them back into the large capacity sports bike market? Let me know what you think down in the comments. In fact, speaking of emissions, they've also been working on a plug-in hybrid, and Riderpart picked up this video published on Yamaha's Japanese YouTube channel that gives us the closest look at it so far. Basically, it's a prototype bike that looks to be like an MT-09, but the key difference of course is it's got a battery and a motor which seems to be piggybacking on the back of their CP3 inline triple. Naturally, the idea is you can ride on the electric at lower speeds before the internal combustion engine seamlessly kicks in as the speed picks up, and you can see this demonstrated a few times in the video. Now, what I like about this one is that it's not too different to a regular MT-09 in terms of the looks. It seems like they've managed to do it in quite a subtle way, but I'm still not particularly convinced that the market is desperate to get on board a hybrid motorcycle, certainly a naked like this anyway. Take the Kawasaki hybrids that launched last year, for example. You know, a daring move, it has to be said. They were the first major manufacturer to get one on the market, but at the moment they're selling them off at pretty much half price at some dealers, which is a humongous discount on a new bike, and so surely that's a huge indication that they have been struggling to shift them. Would this Yamaha be any different? And would any of you seriously consider buying a hybrid version, or would you just obviously go for the regular MT-09? Again, let me know what you think down below. Now, also from Yamaha, there's been a lot of news around them this week. We've got word on some new tech, courtesy of Cycle World, who report they're looking to ditch their radar-enabled rider aids in favor of a camera-powered system. You see, currently, bikes like their Tracer 9 GT Plus Tourer use radars both front and rear for, active cruise control and blind spot warnings and so on. But a recent bunch of patent applications show that they may be working on a system that just uses a single camera at the front for some of that front-facing tech. The idea with a camera that does image analysis on what it sees in front of it is that it can be a bit more predictive than the radar tech. And so that should result in fewer false alarms where there is a vehicle in front, but perhaps it's moving away, and so the camera can help to predict that, whereas the radar might not be able to. They even give some specific scenarios in the patent where it shows vehicles taking different turns, but I still think a lot of riders would have a tough time trusting it, especially given how vulnerable you are on a bike versus, the car equivalent tech where you're still protected by a cage and airbags and all that stuff. Personally, when I'm riding the bikes with the radar-enabled cruise control, I'll stick it on for relatively straight motorways to follow a vehicle in front, and I have largely been quite impressed with most of the implementations that I've tried from different manufacturers, but I'd almost always switch it off when the road gets a little more complex, where there's more junctions and stuff, because I'd rather just trust my own judgment in those particular circumstances. Maybe that's exactly what they're trying to address with this particular update, but I think it's just hardwired into bikers to be exceptionally careful in those circumstances, and so I'd love to hear from anyone else who's tried the radar-enabled tech on some bikes as to what you thought of it and whether you think it could be improved by tech like this. Also filing a pattern this week though, we've got Honda, again picked up on Cycle World, and this is for what looks like a simpler version of their e-clutch system. Basically, The existing system allows you to ride it as a twist and go because there's an electronic actuator fitted to the side of the clutch which can be controlled by the bike's electronics, so there's no need to pull the clutch in when you come to a stop and no need to let it out as you move away. There is, however, still a manual clutch lever so you can override it, so you could feather it when you were, riding slowly, for example. But overall, it's a fairly simple system that works really quite well, and it doesn't cost too much to add to the particular bikes that it's available on either. That said, it looks like Honda still aren't happy with it. They're looking to make it potentially cheaper and also sleeker, with a new version that has 2 sets of cables, one to the clutch lever and one to an actuator, but this version can be stashed anywhere on the bike effectively, and so it doesn't actually have to be bolted to the side of the clutch cover. So perhaps lower costs and cleaner looks where it doesn't stick out as much at the side of the engine, could convince more people to give it a try. Although from what I can see in some of the UK sales data, it does look like it's performing pretty well anyway. The 2 bikes that are available with e-clutch are the CB650R Naked and the CBR650R Sports Bike. And if you look at registration data for last year on How Many Left, which is a sort of website that shows you public data for vehicles by make and models here in the UK, well, it looks like from the 2 model codes available that they've sold pretty much half and half, with manual versus e-clutch on the Naked version, and the sports bike has almost sold 2 to 1 in favour of the e-clutch, which, to be fair, quite surprised me. It is pretty good though, the current version. There's not particularly a big downside to it, and so you kind of think for a few £100 or a couple of £100 you may as well spec it up. And so do check out our full review of e-clutch, which I published last year, if you want to find out more about it. Anyway, that, my friends, rounds off the highlights from the world of motorcycling for this week, and so do let me know any thoughts you have down in the comments. Plus, I'll put last week's episode on the screen now in case you missed it, so you can give it a click and give it a watch, where we looked at the new BMW R1300R and also Ducati's latest tie-up with Lamborghini. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news like this right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.